شلام عليكم برجع المغبة مع البودكاست صورة. إديوم خلقتا إيلا بوتعليموتا آشوريتا وبولخانا ومتنايا باوق عم ترمي قرياتي تآنيت إتلم بالاتوتا وبلاخينا قداها خقلا ومتنايا إقامتا إلى ميقارتا بريتيل تايغرس ديفيد آنت إلى مدبرانتا تعليموتا آشوريتا ين The Young Assyrian وبزي تلن ميقارتا لينا يلاها عين إلى هدمتا اتآها شتآسا. شلام عليكم. What inspired you to get involved in youth advocacy within the Assyrian community?
So it comes down to the personal level first for me, because I grew up in a household in a city called Kirkuk in Iraq, and I lived most of my life there. My parents always talked about love of our nation, khubet umta. It was very important, even if we didn't have to do it in a louder perspective, but we did it on like small details here and there. Also, the desire to make a difference in the community, because our community needs it. And the fact that we got passed down this rich heritage from our ancestors, and I hope that one day I can say I was able to preserve that in a way where my forefathers will be proud of me and the community. And it might be different experience for my colleague, Bertel. So what do you think?
So I was raised in a very similar way, except I grew up in Australia and I grew up very far away from the Assyrian community. But I was raised with the same obligation. My late grandfather on my dad's side, as well as my mum's side, and my dad and my auntie Susie David have been involved in advocacy work. I wasn't really given a choice. I was raised knowing that not only is it an obligation for me to get involved in advocacy work, but it's actually a privilege, because we come from a very rich and ancient heritage where we are, Jesus Christ spoke our language. So I went to Assyrian school from the age of 3 before I even started normal school. I was raised going to Assyrian events. Even if I didn't understand, I was made to sit there. I was told to be quiet and I was told to listen and learn. And then as soon as I was old enough to actually get involved, which for me was 7 years old at my first event, my auntie put me on the stage and said, "Share your opinion. Help your community." And it's only grown from there. And I think it's very important that other children are raised, not just going to our parties or our weddings. And even though church is beautiful, knowing that our culture has so much more to give other than just our Christianity, because we don't actually have our country. Our country lives in us. We don't have a country to preserve our language, our culture, our tradition. The only way we can preserve it is in ourselves and through our experiences and what we share with each other and the people around us.
Why do you think it's important for young Assyrians to be involved in advocacy work today?
I think that it's important because our younger generation are our future. And I think the older generations, when they came here, did an amazing job at establishing so many different organizations, building connections, whether that be cross-community, within the church space, across parliament. And it would be a shame for all of those connections to die alongside the older generations. I think that it's time that the younger generations learn from older generations, learn how to get involved in advocacy work, learn about Parliament, learn about the church, and take on those subject matters, learn about them and build on them, because our younger generation have so many new, fresh ideas to bring to the table. And they have a limited time to absorb what the older community has to offer before the obligation is then in their hands. And it would be a shame if our younger generation doesn't continue that hard work, because within the diaspora, we only really have each other. We have our younger generation. We don't have anybody else advocating for us. The only people who will advocate for us and help our community is ourselves.
Honestly, Bertil, I couldn't agree more with you. All I'm going to add to this is that because I came to Australia and I saw how our community is doing and what more that we can do, the fact that we have all these opportunities given to us by Australia and by all the hard work that the older generation of Assyrians has already built for us, I think our future is very bright.
What strategies have the young Assyrian used to engage young people in the community, and how successful have they been?
Okay, so I think there are a few strategies that we've employed. The first one is that we're looking at incorporating a social element. So we're looking at putting in monthly mixes to get our youth together, whether that be for a games night or a movie night, and that will give our youth just a nice carefree way of engaging and socializing with one another. Secondly is looking at building cross-community alliances. So we're already looking at engaging in partnerships with pre-existing Assyrian organizations, whether that be the church group or the uni group, in order to get our youth bodies together and get everybody more engaged across those organizations and help each other to build each other up. The other cross-community alliance that we are looking at establishing is because of our partnership with the Greeks and the Armenians. They have their own youth committees that have been running for a really long time within the advocacy space. And because the Young Assyrians is really the first Assyrian youth group to purely focus on academia and advocacy work, we are looking at engaging with those two communities and their youth committees in order to build those cross-community alliances and get our youth more engaged in cross-community platforms. Thirdly, we offer the opportunity for our youth to attend really high-level meetings and prestigious events, which is a very good opportunity for them, opens up opportunities spreading across academia, community work, parliamentary connections. So it really helps our youth build a good network base and database and helps them in their personal and professional lives outside of the organization. And finally, we provide training programs for our youth. So whenever somebody joins our board, we do comprehensive training programs that teaches them how a board works, how parliamentary meetings work, how community alliances work. And that's a really important training that they can then take with them into the professional environment.
What role does social media play in engaging youth, and how can we leverage it to spread awareness and build momentum?
Social media has a big impact, especially on our younger generation. And that was something that Ramson Edward, our executive director, and I were very focused on revamping when we reestablished the Young Assyrians. We went through the Instagram page, we cleared it out, we built a brand, and that brand is something that we're continuing on working on and developing. But regarding our current initiatives, I'll pass it on to Lena, who I'm sure can explain a little bit more.
Thank you so much, Pratil. So I think the social media is a powerful tool for any organization. And I'm going to talk about my personal experience with this because the reason why I'm with the Young Assyrians today is because of social media. And I've seen how hard the social media team is working here at the Young Assyrians and posting all the informative information and their public posts on Instagram. I also want to add to this the fact that our community and our nation is dispersed all around the world, and social media is our way of connecting. Like you have Assyrians connecting from Australia to Germany to Canada to Assyrians in America to even Assyrians in homeland Guatra. I think it's an amazing perspective to take on social media, just engaging with our people in so many different ways.
What barriers have you personally faced in your advocacy work, and how have you navigated them?
Okay, so I think there are a couple of problems that we faced in our advocacy work. Firstly, when I first joined the advocacy space, there wasn't really much youth within the political advocacy space. I think our youth were more focused at that time on church or even going to Assyrian language school, which are both very important elements, but there wasn't really anyone to share the advocacy space with. And that was one of the main goals of trying to reestablish the Young Assyrians, because it gave youth the opportunity to band together and work within the academic and advocacy space within an organization that has long-standing connections and will support them in that endeavor. I think another really big problem that we've faced and we've looked at overcoming is looking at cross-collaboration. So I think now there are so many Assyrian groups out there, and one of the goals of the Young Assyrians is to kind of bring all of these groups together in a way where we can collaborate and cooperate with one another to bring the best out for our community. So we've taken a page from our Greek and Armenian allies, but they have youth groups that focus on language, cultural preservation, advocacy work, and all of those groups work together to produce some really amazing work. So we're looking, now that we've established the Young Assyrians, to continue working with other youth groups at building that collaborative network so we can come up with some really good ideas. Finally, I think it's actually explaining our work to people, both people outside of our community and, very sadly, people within our community, because a lot of the work we are doing is looking at the long-term goal of one day having a homeland, one day having a place where our people can go back to their lands and feel safe and be able to call their land Assyria. It looks like such a big goal and something that's so far away that we often get asked the question, okay, well, what is the point? And I think what it is about advocacy work is taking time to appreciate those little moments, those little victories, those little successes, because it's those little successes that one day will get us a country. And whilst we may not get our country overnight, I think it's trying to inform people that those little steps still matter, and those little steps will one day get us our country. And if you have faith in God and you have faith in the Bible, then you will believe that one day we will get Assyria back.
Could you highlight any recent campaigns or initiatives that the Young Assyrian has led or been involved in? What impact have you seen?
So I'll start this one by mentioning our initiative with Visit Assyria and the overwhelming response that we've received. So many of our young people here want to visit Assyria, want to visit Atra, and we're currently discussing with our contacts, Go Atra, and we cannot wait to take our people to our beautiful cultural sites, our heritage sites, and also our beautiful churches in all the Assyrian Metwate Go Atra. And there are so many other initiatives that my colleague Bertil would like to add to that.
So there are a few other initiatives that we've been working on. I'd like to begin with just mentioning our Assyria Day conference, which the Young Assyrians hosted. We had an amazing guest list. We had politicians, we had scholars, we had our allies, so the Armenian National Council and the Pontian Federation. That was an amazing program with a very amazing list of guest speakers. But just adding on to our alliance with the Armenian National Council and the Pontian Federation, that is part of an alliance called the Joint Justice Initiative, or the JJI, which is something that our parent organization, the Assyrian National Council, worked really hard to establish. The Young Assyrians have been attending a lot of JJI initiatives, meetings, and looking at getting federal recognition for the genocide and incorporating education about that genocide into the school curriculum. And that's something that we've been really excited to work on.
What are the long-term goals of the Young Assyrians in terms of advocacy and community engagement?
I think there are a few long-term goals of the Young Assyrians. The first one would be to expand our volunteer database, just getting as many young people on board who are interested in advocacy efforts or even academia, which leads me on to the second long-term goal, and that's to really expand on our two main goals, which is advocacy and academia. So going into the first one of advocacy, our parent organization, which is Assyrian National Council, has worked so hard on their advocacy efforts. And all of the board members of the Young Assyrians will be the future board members of the Assyrian National Council. So training them to be a part of such a prestigious organization, to engage in high-level meetings, that's very much a long-term goal for us. And additionally, it's to build our academic database. So we are already working with a lot of international libraries and academics who can help us get access to a range of first-hand accounts, to papers, and for us to actually build this academic database, as well as produce academia of our own. So that's another long-term goal for us. And I think the third long-term goal for us is just to expand our partnerships, both with other communities, but also within the Assyrian community space. And obviously to achieve our long-term goals of Assyrian genocidal recognition and the need for an Assyrian homeland.
How can young Assyrians who aren't yet involved start participating in advocacy efforts?
I'll start by saying a direct message to our youth. Do not hesitate at all to contact us. Our socials are open. The DMs are open if you have any questions, but you're not sure how to start a conversation. Even if it's not directly to our socials, you can contact any of us on the board. The Young Assyrians has so many opportunities. If you want to volunteer, if you want to become a board member with us, we have so many other opportunities. Or even if you want to know more about what our organization is doing, everything will be available on our website.
هاوتن بسيمة رابا ميقارتا بريتيل ميقارتا لينا شاركتوخن عمن الجميومة.
No, thank you, Albert. And thank you, Sawra Podcast, for hosting us today. We look forward to working with you in the future.
برجان المغبة بخوتاما اتلي قوبل طيبوتا وطيان تتمنتا من ميقارتا بريتيل وميقارتا لينا الديولون من داني شركلون عمن الجميومة بداها خلقتا مع البودكاست صورة. هاوتن رابا بسيمة برجانا وبطلابن منوخن أبزي لمن شيتون أو ديتون فولو شير قد خلقتا مطير كل دنيا مني أنا ألبرت شليمون بوشم البطاواتي.